Oh, looks like rain. Hey guys, let's talk money. How much has it cost us this last month to travel around Norway in our camper van? So yeah, one of the biggest questions that we've been asked is Norway as expensive as we've been made to believe? Is it really expensive? You know, before we came to Norway, we had 3 months in Spain and Portugal, which is probably, one of the cheapest places to travel in a camper van. So let's just take a quick look at what we've spent in the last 30 days here in Norway. Now, just a little caveat on that. This is really just about travelling in Norway over the last 30 days. We will do a bigger, more in-depth cost breakdown in a couple of months' time, and that will include kind of getting here as well. But this really is the minute that we set foot in Kristiansand right up until, 30 days later, which is a couple of days ago. So first up on our list is groceries. Now, as expected, this is our biggest expense so far. Now, we did help things out a little bit by bringing quite a lot of dried long life food across from the UK, things like packet rice and soups and various bits and pieces like that. And to be fair, the grocery shopping in Norway, I would say it's pretty much on a par for most things with the UK. We're probably spending about £100 a week. Now, we've spent £403 in the last 30 days. And we do our main shop sort of twice a week. And then we would then go into the shops maybe a couple more times on top of that to get milk and bread and the odds and sods. So we're probably spending about £100 a week. Now, some things, obviously alcohol, and you'll hear me speaking about alcohol a little bit later as well. In a supermarket, still very expensive. Just, we're avoiding that as much as possible. Even bread can be pretty expensive. We tried to kind of lower our costs a little bit by going for the cheaper bread. Yeah, don't do that. It's horrible. And cheese, oh my good God. Thankfully, we don't eat a huge amount of cheese, but cheese is extremely expensive. Now, for that £100, we're probably eating meat maybe only 2 or 3 times a week, and that would typically be chicken or salmon. The rest of the week, we're just doing fresh pasta, vegetable dishes, and fresh and maybe couscous and various things like that. So about £100 a week for groceries. Not as expensive as we thought it was going to be. Our next biggest expense is campsites and airs. Now, this has come out at £221. Slightly higher than we had hoped for 1 month so far, and that's because we had a couple of extra days in both the campsite at Flam and also at Molde, because we had quite a lot of work to do. On average, you're probably looking at about £30 a night for a campsite for 2 people in a camper van. That quite often does not include your shower, which will be on top of that, but pretty often will include electric. Now, as I said, we're hoping to kind of cut down on those costs in the next month, and to be honest, the free park-ups in Norway are absolutely stunning. And of course, typically within half an hour or an hour's drive of a free park-up, you will also have a service point, which quite often is free for emptying and even free for filling your grey water and even drinking water as well. So we're hoping to reduce our costs somewhat over these next 30 days to perhaps bring that down into what we had said was a campsite once a week, where we could sort of do laundry and sort of give the van a bit of a clean. So we've kind of went over that budget just a little bit, but hopefully we'll bring that down going forward. And as I said, the free, beautiful park-ups here in Norway have been spectacular. Next one is eating out. And again, this is something that we probably want to reduce a little bit. And it's one that's actually surprised us. So our eating out costs for the last month, £150. Now, the reason why I say surprising is because £70 of that was actually on Nicola's birthday meal in Bergen, and very nice it was too. So we spent £80 on odds and sods. Now, in Flam, I did the brewery, they do a platter of little small beers to test, and I think that worked out about £25. After a pretty demanding hike about a week ago, which you guys have yet to see, we treated ourselves to a glass of wine and a beer, and again that was £20, and the odd coffee and cake. Now, if you do like a coffee or maybe a bit of junk food like a pizza slice or something, highly recommend 7-Eleven. But as you can see, even though we've only been out for one meal, we've still totaled up £80 on just odds and sods. So again, that's something that we're hoping to kind of reduce a little bit in the month ahead. Next up is fuel. Now, I'm not quite sure how many miles we have done, but we have spent 138 quid so far on fuel, and I think we have a full tank at the moment, so that should see us over the next sort of 3 or 4 days at least. Now, the fuel pricing is confusing. The prices fluctuate on an hourly basis sometimes. We have seen fluctuations over a day of a couple of krona, and of course if you're filling up a tank, 70 litre tank, that can make quite a bit of difference. The cheapest we have seen it and the cheapest we have got it is about 18.5 krona. The most expensive we have seen only a couple of days ago was 24 krona. Now apparently the fuel prices have come down a heck of a lot from this time last year, but just be mindful that those price fluctuations can happen pretty dramatically throughout the day. So our advice, and one of the things that we're starting to do now, is we're filling up little and often. We've got an idea that if we see fuel for anything around 18, 19 krona, we will fill up even if it's only 20 quid's worth. But just be aware that if you're one of these people who get frustrated when you fill your tank up and then you drive 20 miles down the road and see it cheaper, that's probably going to happen quite a lot. But yeah, fill up little and often. Just on driving, these costs at the moment do not include tolls. The whole toll situation is being taken care of in our next Monies vlog in a couple of months' time. So at the moment this does not include toll roads or indeed ferries. But talking about driving, the views in Norway when you're driving are pretty spectacular, as you would imagine. Let me throw up a little bit of footage just to show you. See what I mean? Absolutely beautiful. So in terms of bang for buck for that diesel cost, I reckon it's pretty worth it. So our next biggest cost has been experiences, and this includes going up the Flam Railway, which I think for two of us one way was £70. Now I personally don't think that was worth it. I don't think the views were that great on the train. But of course it was kind of worth it for us because it meant that we could then run down. Obviously that's only a one-way ticket. I'm not even sure what the return ticket would be. I think it's a little bit cheaper if you book it online rather than booking it on the day. But personally, I would almost, if you're going to do it, or if you want to get up to the higher station, I would almost bike up, hire an electric bike or something, and cycle up. But yeah, so that was 70 quid. And then I think that price also includes our parking at Trollstegen, no, not Trollstegen, at Pulpit Rock, and it also includes the bus that we had to take to do the hike that we haven't yet showed you on this channel. But yeah, experiences, 146 quid so far, and apart from the Flam Railway, the other costs that we have paid for that have absolutely been worth it. The Pulpit Rock and the hike that we haven't yet spoken about, but 146 quid on experiences. Now, we're not going into museums and we're not going into other sort of churches and cathedrals and things, so I reckon that price could actually ramp up pretty quickly. We're getting most of our kicks and joys out of free things in nature, which is what we love. As a side note to experiences, we were all set to go on a fjord cruise. In fact, we were going to do that from Flam, but actually driving up and down the fjords and going hikes around the sort of fjordlands, we actually don't think you actually need to go on a fjord cruise. On top of that, when you're driving through Norway, you'll get on loads and loads of little tiny ferries anyway, and quite often, you know, everyone will stay in their car, so you'll be the only one kind of wandering around the deck or sitting looking at the big bay view windows. So you're getting all of these little tiny mini cruises anyway, so we didn't think doing a fjord cruise was worth it. I think who the fjord cruises are probably geared towards are the folks who have come off the big cruise liners and then they can go up to some of the smaller fjords. But for us, spending money on a fjord cruise just wasn't worth it. Drive up and down them, hike above them, perfect. I can feel that wind getting up. I think we're due maybe a little bit more rain in a bit. So then we had odds and sods, and I think this was just bits and pieces and gifts and various bits and pieces, so that's 57 quid. And again, Nothing. Nicola loves to buy her fridge magnets, and I think she was saying that they're between 3 and 5 quid, so maybe a little bit more expensive than Southern Europe, but yeah, it is what it is. We also had to send some mail back to the UK. I think that was 15 quid in there as well. And then finally parking at 35 quid. And again, most of the parking that we have done, that parking does not include overnights, that's included in the campsites and ours. But most of the parking that we have done has been out in the wilds and in little villages, so the parking there is free. But if you're in some of the bigger towns, then you will be hit with parking costs. We just use the Easy Park app, and you can just dial in how often you want. It's normally a couple of quid per hour for your parking. So again, drum roll. That for 30 days in Norway for 2 people travelling in a camper van has been £1,150. Now we had hoped to keep a budget of about £1,000 a month, so we have obviously blown that a little bit, but I think we can easily see where we've blown that from, and that's from the airs, maybe an extra couple of days that we probably shouldn't have had in the airs, and maybe cutting down on those extracurricular cakes and coffees. Make our own coffee from now on. Now, not included in this, but included in next month's breakdown, we had a couple of unforeseen costs come in, so whether or not we can still stick to that sort of in and around £1,000 a month. But honestly, staying away from alcohol and cheese, the costs I would say aren't too bad. Now I think if you come from somewhere like southern Spain and you want to go for a coffee, or Portugal with their coffees and their pastel de nata, oh how I miss those, then you'll be a bit shell shocked. But actually we haven't found it too bad, especially if you love getting out into nature. You know, park up for a couple of days, spend your days hiking, cook in the van, make your own coffee, and actually it's all pretty cheap. Grocery shopping pretty much on a par to the UK, and fuel, well, if you can work it out, as long as you fill up little and often, shouldn't be too bad. But £1,150 for 2 people in a camper van, 30 days in Norway, July 2023. Wish I could make better coffee, mind you. But Norway has been, you've probably guessed by our vlog so far, Norway has been spectacular and so worth that 1,100 quid that we've spent over the last month. Beautiful. Oh, and by the way, yeah, I haven't done away with Nicola. She's back up in the van. I think she likes to bury her head in the sand when it comes to costs. I've been kind of keeping a running total of all of our costs so far, so. But yeah, Norway, you absolute beautiful country. Right guys, well once again, thanks a lot for following along, and we'll do, if this has been useful, let us know in the comments, but we'll probably do another one of these in a month's time. We'll do them sort of rolling months, and then when we're finished with our Scandinavian trip, we'll probably do a complete breakdown in more detail. And I say, if you have any questions or comments on costs in Norway, let us know in the comments as well. I think it's lunchtime. Thanks a lot for following along, guys, and until next time, take care. Bye bye.